This video is sponsored by Raycon.
We found a way to create, I think, a nice, fun tone and personality of the franchise that people seem to want more of. And it's been an adventure making a second one. We've given ourselves less time on this film than we did last time. It's a much more ambitious project, and this was part of the fear that I had when we had started so late, less than 2 years to do this, to come up with the story, set it up, prep it, film it, cut it. It's no excuse. We're gonna have to do a great film, but it does put everybody under a tremendous amount of stress. It was ambitious to begin with, and now we've got to knock it into overdrive. So there's gonna be a lot of people not sleeping, hundreds of people not sleeping.
We were an underdog the first time we came around. All eyes were on us this time.
We worked our asses off just to get Iron Man 2 to a place where it could maybe be on the mantle next to the first one.
Iron Man's a memory, probably better in their minds than it was on the film. And so you're fighting, you're competing, you're fighting against a set of expectations.
Shooting Iron Man.
Yeah! There we go. No turning back now.
Imagine you were the one who made Iron Man. It was the smash hit that nobody really saw coming, and that was because of you and your team, your partners in this crazy, punky, and fresh crime. You guys started something that nobody thought would work, nobody truly believed in. What now? Now everyone believes in it, everyone wants a stake in it, everyone wants a sequel. Everyone wants a sequel that captures the magic the first one did, and every one of the producers, the execs, the pockets wants something different from it. They want something different from what you want. And they want it in 2 years instead of the 3 years it took you to make the first one. Good f***ing luck. Iron Man 2 is a weird movie and an even weirder sequel. On one hand, it's one of the best looking Marvel movies. Matthew Libatique's cinematography is filled with incredible energy. It's insanely colorful. The sets and locations are much more diverse than the first film. The sense of scale is off the charts. Tons of extras, crazy practical effects, different suits, the best suits, different locations that almost never feel like a green screen studio, and action scenes that are more fun, more inventive, and more engaging. On the other hand, it's a freaking mess, a fascinating mess, a film that was rushed, a film that had way too many cooks in the kitchen, a film that most people who worked on it seemed to dislike, a film that tries to be about something but was edited down to be a movie about nothing, a movie that has enough plots for 3 movies, a movie that is so clinically fun to watch, made so perfectly lightweight and enjoyable to consume, but comes off as pretty much entirely empty, void of a deeper meaning and a grander purpose. Half an Avengers setup, half a rushed Iron Man sequel. This is Iron Man 2, and this is why Iron Man 2 is broken. But first, the world's crazy right now, and it's our job to make things less crazy for the people who will save us. That's why we need to stay the home. And what better way to pass the time than to watch your favorite movies and listen to your favorite tunes, audiobooks, podcasts, and anything and everything you want with the Raycon wireless earbuds. Their latest model, the Raycon Everyday E25, comes in a variety of colors with 6 hours of playback time in 6 different sizes to best fit your ear to give you a nice noise-isolating fit. Need to get some exercise? Throw these bad boys on and get to it without worrying about being tangled up and tied down by traditional wired headphones. And best of all, you don't need to have a Kevin Feige-sized pile of money sitting in your vault to afford them. Raycon earbuds start at about half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds on the market. I've been using the Everyday E25s to rewatch Smallville every night until the crack of dawn. I may be missing out on my precious hours of beauty sleep, but you're missing out on the damn fine sound quality. They're discreet, they're stylish, they're comfortable, and you can get yourself a pair for 15% off by clicking my custom link in the description. That's buyraycon.com/HiTop. You'll be supporting my channel and getting yourself some super great and super affordable earbuds in return. It's a win-win. I have a weird relationship with Iron Man 2. I wouldn't say we were ever in love. Love is a strong word. I love the first Iron Man, always have and I always will, but with Iron Man 2, it's more of a fascination, a fatal attraction. It's the MCU movie that I have seen the most times, and I would consider it to be one of the most fun superhero movies. You hear that a lot from critics, right? Oh, it's a
fun superhero movie.
And most of the time, a
fun superhero movie
really means a fairly uninspired, lightweight, forgettable, but enjoyable experience. Too passable to hate and too meaningless to love. And what's weird is that it seems like Iron Man 2 was edited down to be just that, a passable sequel, a great popcorn flick, a film that in no way tops the freshness and heart of the first one, but isn't offensive enough to be considered a massive disappointment. A fun superhero movie. I say edited down to be that because it is clear, abundantly clear, that Jon Favreau, writer Justin Theroux, Robert Downey Jr., and the entire cast and crew did not intend for Iron Man 2 to be just another fun superhero movie. Quite the opposite, in fact. They wanted to go bigger, they wanted to make something that stood toe-to-toe with the first film, and most importantly, they wanted to dive deeper into the character of Tony Stark.
We have new crew, we have new people, we have new energy, we have new story. Yes, we're going to look more beneath the mask. We're hoping, because we know a lot of people are going to see this film, whether we up or not, that we can imbue it with a sense of the kind of humanity and naturalism and love of the game that we had last time.
To be fair, if Iron Man 2 succeeds at any of those things, it freaking excels at going bigger. A $200 million superhero flick that looks, sounds, and feels like a $200 million superhero flick. Just look at Tony's introduction. We get an exhilarating 38-second long take where an armored-up Tony jumps out of a plane and starts skydiving into a sea of exploding fireworks while AC/DC blasts. It's exciting, visually engaging, and it captures the tone that we love from the first film. We follow up that shot with Iron Man slam. What a great way to introduce Tony, a sensory overload of excess. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the problem with this movie sure as hell ain't the visuals. Even with the new 4K transfer where Disney put what's essentially an Instagram filter over the film to take out the film grain. Yes, they did this and it's horrible and someone should get fired. You're disrespecting the work of the artist to make your movies look like digital shit. Iron Man 2 still has color, it still has pop, it still has a unique style and a wonderful, clever blend of practical and CG effects. And if you're like me and lie awake at night wondering why the CG looks so good in this movie, looks a million times sexier, cleaner, and more cinematic than modern Marvel flicks, this is why.
So our previs isn't just coming out of a previs department of animators that are doing the job of the editor, the stunt coordinator, and the cinematographer. We're actually engaging all those people in that process.
From the first film, it's been very important to Jon and to us that we don't just make everything CG just to make it CG.
Shooting practical elements seems big and expensive, but it's actually less expensive than the type of digital work that would be required. And the less you're asking of your vendors to create out of nothing, the more likely you are to achieve something that fools the audience.
But did we get that deeper examination of Tony Stark that Jon and Robert wanted? The answer is complicated. There are two Iron Man 2s, and that is extraordinarily clear when watching Iron Man 2. There's the Iron Man 2 the filmmakers wanted, and there's the Iron Man 2 that Marvel Studios wanted. The first Iron Man 2, the better Iron Man 2, is about...
It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not even about us. It's about
legacy. Did he inherit the sins of his father? What was the best part of his dad? What's he going to do with his life?
Or rather, it wants to be about legacy.
Therefore, what I'm saying, if I'm saying anything...
It wants to, kind of like the first film, question the legacy that Howard Stark left Tony. Was Howard the legendary futurist to encourage the most brilliant and creative minds?
So from all of us here at Stark Industries, I would like to personally introduce you to the city of the future.
Or was he the cold, alcoholic, neglectful father that took sole credit for Anton Vanko's work? The Howard that Tony remembers.
So from all of us at Stark Industries, I'd like to personally show you my ass.
And what part of Howard did Tony inherit? The hero or the selfish, egotistical, tortured alcoholic? Iron Man 2 presents these ideas and themes, and it establishes characters and antagonists that support these ideas and themes, but it never really gets the chance to explore them properly. Let's switch things up and talk about those antagonists first.
I want my board.
There's some real interesting setup with Whiplash, Ivan Vanko. The very first scene in Iron Man 2 is a twisted version of Tony building the arc reactor in the cave. Both Tony and Ivan use their father's knowledge and teachings to build themselves a heart at their lowest points. The difference is Ivan and his father are poor, forgotten Russian criminals, while Howard and Tony were famous, celebrated visionaries. Ivan is set up to be this dark reflection of Tony Stark, a villain created because of Howard Stark's sins. Ivan believes his father died a nobody because the Stark legacy destroyed any possible chance of a Vanko legacy. Now he wants to destroy Tony, make
God bleed, and people will cease to believe in him.
And prove the government right. Prove that Iron Man isn't a hero that should be worshipped by the people, but an irresponsible prick that shouldn't be trusted. And that's a fucking great idea, a perfect idea for a sequel, a Doc Ock or Joker level villain on paper. They even got Mickey Rourke. The problem is, for some stupid reason, this is barely explored, barely developed on. Ivan and Tony essentially have one face-to-face conversation, and it's maybe the most dramatic scene in the film.
You come from a family of thieves and butchers. And now, like all guilty men, try to rewrite your own history. And you forget all the lives the Stark family has destroyed.
But this is forgotten about, abandoned. For fuck's sake, Tony thinks Ivan is dead for the majority of the film.
Vanko's alive?
Throughout the first act, it's implied that Ivan and his father are supposed to be these tortured geniuses that got screwed over by Howard's lack of empathy and pure douchery instead of cheesy, stereotypical, angry, generic Russian bad guys. Characters that are used to critique Howard and critique Tony and his downward spiral, his character regression. But by the 40-minute mark, the film is edited in a way that makes the Vankos look like slightly smarter, cheesy, stereotypical, angry, generic Russian bad guys. It turns out, in a scene that looks as if it was clearly a reshoot, that Ivan's father was planning to sell all of Howard's ideas and inventions to the Soviets.
Anton Vanko is the other side of that coin. Anton saw it as a way to get rich. When your father found out, he had him deported.
It's such a massive waste. What could be complex, what could be a superhero film where the villain isn't entirely wrong, where the villain is a somewhat sympathetic, darker version of the hero that exists because of the hero's father's sins, is reduced to an angry, forgettable Russian dude out for revenge. What could be morally gray becomes so blandly black and white. I explained to Justin Theroux and to Jon Favreau that I wanted to bring other layers and colors, not just make this Russian a complete murderous, revenging bad guy. And they allowed me to do that. Unfortunately, the people at Marvel just wanted a one-dimensional bad guy, so most of the performance ended up on the floor. And it's too fucking bad, but it's their loss. At the end of the day, you've got some nerd with a pocket full of money calling the shots. You know, Favreau didn't call the shots. I wish he would have. You can catch a glimpse of how this relationship between Tony and Ivan was supposed to play out in the deleted scenes.
Why don't you let her go? She's not like us, she's normal. We're the same.
The same. Not yet.
But that's what they are. Deleted scenes.
If you look in the deleted scenes, we included in the deleted scenes, you see in some of the deleted materials in the deleted scenes. That scene was much longer too. You can look at that. I think we have that included. This was a longer scene. You'll see the original scene that we shot, much longer version, which in the original conception, so I had to fight very hard to keep the scene in as I was getting notes from above saying, hey, get it out, take 10 minutes out, get this out, get this out. In the deleted scenes, you can see that in the deleted scenes, and goodbye.
There is another villain in Iron Man 2, and he is by far the best part of the film, which is surprising because unlike Vanko, his purpose isn't to tell us or show us anything about Tony or his legacy. His purpose isn't anything profound or complex. In fact, it's simply to be the Daffy Duck to Tony Stark's Bugs Bunny. That being said, this villain, this national treasure, is maybe the most charismatic and for sure my favorite antagonist across the entire MCU.
Were you talking to the right guy?
Justin Hammer. What a freaking legend, and that's why I got a YouTube legend to talk about my hero, Justin.
Thanks, Alex. That's right, I am Nando from Nando V Movies, and I am here as the internet's leading Justin Hammer expert to tell you guys that Justin Hammer is great. He's really funny, and he does a cool dance. So yeah, he's really good. If that's not enough, I can, let me just go grab some coffee. I'll be right back. Yeah, that is better. All right, so Alex, Justin Hammer, why is he the best character in Iron Man 2 and the perfect character for Iron Man 2? Well, first, Justin Hammer is funny. Like, Sam Rockwell puts in an incredible performance. He's able to improvise like Robert Downey Jr. and Jon Favreau did so well in Iron Man 1, and he's got a very strong presence. One of the things Jon Favreau said about Sam Rockwell is he hired him specifically because he needed someone with enough charisma to not just be overtaken by Robert Downey Jr. when they're filming scenes together, and I think you can see from the courtroom scene that holds up pretty well. He's also really good at adapting the weapons scene where he's doing the demonstration for Rhodey and the Generals. Apparently, Justin Theroux wrote that scene the night before, and they gave Sam Rockwell an earpiece, and Sam Rockwell did those lines on the day, having not heard them before. And you look at what came out of that. It's one of the most memorable parts of that movie. It's super funny. The ex-wife speech, that was not planned, and yet it is awesome. The second reason Justin Hammer works so well in Iron Man 2, he's an incredibly effective foil for Tony Stark at this point in his life. You see, Tony Stark has gone through a journey of self-discovery in Iron Man 1, and he came out a different character. He cares about people, he wants to be responsible, and now, in Iron Man 2, he needs to face off against a character who is the worst version of Tony Stark. He is egotistical, he is narcissistic, he's a womanizer, he's unethical. That's Justin Hammer. He is what Tony Stark would be if Tony Stark never had his experience in Afghanistan. So, pitting the new Tony Stark against the old Tony Stark is a great way to contrast how much he has grown and force new Tony Stark to decide who he is now. And the third reason Justin Hammer is so excellent, he's honestly a really effective villain. Like, a lot of people come out of Iron Man 2 seeing Vanko as the main antagonist, but really all Vanko is a guy who creates some evil whips and uses them to fight Tony at a car race and then loses, until Justin Hammer comes in, frees Vanko from prison, gives him resources, and most importantly, gives him a new goal and motivation. Right? Vanko, all he wants to do is kill Tony in the beginning of the movie, but Justin sits him down and says, no, you're doing this wrong. You need to go after his legacy. Because really, legacy is what Iron Man 2 is all about. It's about Tony coming to terms with his father's legacy. It's about Tony forging his own legacy as Iron Man. So in that movie, you would want a villain who is attacking that legacy specifically, and Whiplash is not that. I mean, you could make the case that the film would be more effective if there was no Whiplash and Justin Hammer was the main villain, a case I make in a video when all you have is a hammer, but that's beside the point. Go watch that video after this. It'll probably be in your recommended feed. All that goes to say, Justin Hammer is kind of like the Uncle Gazpacho of this movie, right? He's fun, he's effective, and he is dangerous. And if you want to put the ex-wife, I guess the ex-wife is Mandarin, and the submachine gun is Whiplash. I don't know, I haven't really thought this one through yet. So basically, Justin Hammer is awesome. And don't think I forgot about the dance. I know we already played that clip, but hey, let's play it again. Oh, that's good stuff.
One thing both the Favreau Iron Man films do is make Tony the villain of his own story. Iron Man was so unique because there weren't many cape films where the hero's greatest enemy and obstacle was themselves. The major risk Iron Man 2 takes is starting off the film with Tony already having regressed so heavily from where we last saw him at the end of Iron Man.
Oh, it's good to be back.
He has gone from fully embracing his growth into a selfless hero, an Iron Man that wasn't out for fame or fortune, but instead existed to atone for the harm that fame and fortune caused.
There is nothing except this. There's no art opening. There is no benefit. There is nothing to sign. There is the next mission and nothing else.
To an ego-fueled rock star.
I'm not saying that the world is enjoying its longest period of uninterrupted peace in years because of me.
It's honestly jarring, especially when you watch these films back to back. Tony is slowly regressing back into the character he was at the beginning of Iron Man 1. The irresponsible, narcissistic prick who had to get kidnapped and tortured in a cave in order to get his act together. Only with Iron Man 2, there is no cave, there is no grand moment of growth or rebirth. Instead, the film has Tony be slowly dying from his own toxic blood. As Jarvis so eloquently puts it,
unfortunately, the device that's keeping keeping you alive is also killing you.
The shrapnel in his heart represents his sins, and as we discover in this film, the arc reactor represents the sins of the father, the sins of Howard Stark. And now those sins are literally poisoning Tony's blood, the Stark blood. So just like Ivan Vanko, on paper, this is a great idea. Can Tony forge his own legacy as Iron Man, or will he succumb to his self-destructive nature? Will he be poisoned by the tainted blood of the Stark name? That's genuinely a really smart, really deep, and really adult internal conflict for a hero to face. But just like with Whiplash, what we get doesn't come close to feeling smart, deep, or adult. It doesn't even feel much like an internal conflict. We get a few quieter moments where Tony is by himself, but most of the time he is acting like a thrill-seeking jackass. And yeah, he is acting that way because he is dying, but other than a few short scenes, I never feel scared for him. I never feel the pressure. I never feel the existential dread of worrying about becoming your father, worrying about what legacy you leave behind. It's fitting that Tony's birthday bash is also his lowest point. It's the only time in the movie where it feels like Marvel is allowing us to not like the person Tony is regressing into. And we get this terrific moment where he screams at the people who are encouraging his behavior, where he screams at what he has become, what he has let Iron Man become. But before we can process the weight of that moment, the whole movie is like this. Any emotional beat is edited down to its most basic form in service of keeping the momentum and fun energy going. The edit isn't character-based, save for a few moments, but plot-based. Every scene goes on exactly as long as it needs to progress the plot without ever really pausing to be about something deeper. As ass-backwards as this might sound, Iron Man 2 feels like it's trying so desperately hard to be lightweight and avoid drama. As you might expect, this massively messes with the pacing. At 49 minutes, we get our first and only dramatic scene between Tony and Rhodey.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at you.
Rhodey seems genuinely worried about his friend, his brother. He sees that Tony is self-destructing and realizes that in this moment he doesn't need an Uncle Ben-style lecture about responsibility, but instead needs a friend.
You want to do this whole lone gunslinger act, and it's unnecessary. You don't have to do this alone.
You know, I wish I could believe that. I really do. But you gotta trust me. Contrary to popular belief, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Now let's fast forward a tiny little bit. Less than 10 minutes later, Rhodey is kicking Tony's ass, destroying his house, telling him he doesn't deserve to wear the suit, and makes the choice to turn over the suit to the United States government. And sure, Rhodey is probably in the right. Tony in his current state shouldn't have the power the Iron Man armor grants him, but this all happens way too soon and way too fast. How does Rhodey even feel about all this? We could be shown the real interesting moral dilemma that both he and Pepper are facing. Tony passes off the massive responsibility of running Stark Industries onto Pepper because
it's boring. Boring. I'm giving you a boring alert. You do it.
I do what?
Excellent idea. I just figured this out. You run the company.
And he forces Rhodey to trust the government and sleazeballs like Hammer and Senator Stern over trusting his best friend. What kind of emotional toll would that take on both these characters? We get bits of it, tiny bits, small moments where they are stressed, angry, and want nothing to do with Tony, but that isn't enough for me. It's like writing a really good story with these marvelous and very human characters and then expecting the audience to feel something when you cut down that story to small, easily digestible bullet points. Iron Man 2 is a film made up of really solid cliff notes. Here we are at the donut where we are reintroduced to Nick Fury, whose purpose in this film is to...
I'm here to give some exposition. Maybe next time I'll get to kick some ass.
Oh, and I haven't mentioned Black Widow for a reason. That reason being the only reason she is here is to look fire, kick some ass, and set up the Avengers. She serves no real purpose and doesn't affect Tony's growth in the slightest. Yeah, you know, I love this shot, and I love how Nick Fury is basically Tony's sponsor who is here to tell him to get his shit together, but like Mr. Jackson said himself, Nick's major purpose is to give exposition. It's to explain the plot and character motivations to Tony and to us.
Thing in your chest is based on unfinished technology. Howard said the arc reactor was a stepping stone to something great. Anton Vanko is the other side of that coin. He spent the next 20 years in a vodka fuel race. Son, you had the misfortune to cross the paths with him. He said that you were the only person with the means and knowledge. You are, then you can solve the riddle of your heart.
In this same conversation with Nick at about an hour and 10 minutes into the film, Tony, for the first time since Iron Man 1, reminds us of the fact that he feels somewhat abandoned and neglected by his father.
He was cold, he was calculating. He never told me he loved me, he never even told me he liked me.
Another really telling and personal line and idea that should have been established much earlier in the film. If Iron Man 2 is about the sins of the father, the sins of the father's legacy, then why is Tony only mentioning how he feels about his father halfway through the movie? Why is Tony's emotional conflict becoming clear halfway through the movie? The problem with having this come so late is that this conflict has to be resolved shortly after it's truly introduced. It has to be resolved so that Tony can go into the third act with a clear head and a clean bill of health. And when I say shortly after, I don't mean like 20 minutes after or even 10. I mean the cathartic moment, the resolution to his daddy issues, happens less than 5 minutes after he brings them up. And don't get me wrong, this scene is my favorite scene in the film. It's slower paced and entirely built on the emotion and the character of Tony Stark, but because Iron Man 2, or what Marvel turned Iron Man 2 into, doesn't feel like exploring anything too deep or too serious, this moment isn't about the similarities between Tony and his father. It's not about the flaws and the deep-rooted issues that they both share.
Tony, what are you doing there? What is that? Put it back where you got it from. Where's your mother? Maria!
It's not about Tony realizing that he needs to escape the sins of his father and get his act together, but more about Howard giving Tony the perfect video message that proves he did indeed love him.
What is and always will be my greatest creation is you.
But this doesn't feel earned. It doesn't feel like the boost and kick in the ass Tony needed to earn the mantle of Iron Man again, especially considering that he lost it only 15 minutes ago. Instead, it feels like a waste of a really cathartic moment that would work much better if the film felt like it was about something instead of wanting to be about nothing. I'm sure in the script, or what they had originally planned, Tony forging the new element to power his heart would be symbolic for him coming to terms with both the good and bad of Howard, the icon and the neglectful father. Forging the new element would mean forging his own legacy, and once he does that,
It tastes like coconut. Metal. Oh, wow, yeah!
he is free from the sins, free from the toxic Stark blood that was slowly killing him, and now he can go to his father's expo and save the innocent, save his loved ones, and save the people he has the responsibility to protect. He can save them from the Stark family mistakes. Once again, a beautiful and powerful idea on freaking paper. Take a shot for every time I've said on paper in this video, but in the actual film, this moment comes across as insanely ridiculous and contrived. I'm not one to care about the logic of a movie. I care way more about the emotion, but you're telling me that the element that Howard had discovered decades ago but couldn't synthesize in his lifetime can not only be made by Tony in a day, but is also the exact element Tony needed to power his heart.
The proposed element should serve as a viable replacement for palladium.
Okay. Anyways, Tony gets his shit together, some pretty colorful and innovative boom, 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 War Machine, boom, 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 boom for 30 minutes, funny, sweet banter, makeup with the loved ones, Avengers setup, joke, the end. There's a really good Iron Man movie and even better sequel somewhere in here. Release the fucking Favreau cut. But sadly, we can only judge the film that we saw, not the genuinely smart attempt at exploring Tony Stark that was left behind in service of being fun, in service of being a fast-paced adventure, in service of setting up the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Our source says that Iron Man 2 wasn't the movie Jon Favreau wanted to make. Marvel interfered heavily with his work on the movie and turned the project into an infomercial for the Avengers. Favreau felt the movie was rushed into production. They pushed him into it without a fully realized script. Favreau wasn't the only one unhappy with Iron Man 2. Robert Downey Jr. saw those same problems, and according to our source, while he's locked in for Iron Man 3, chances are that will be his last movie. Doesn't that depress you a little bit? Imagine creatively messing with the guy you started off your entire franchise. Imagine fucking with his vision on your third freaking film. I'm sure Jon Favreau and Marvel are all good now. I mean, both he and Robert Downey Jr. came back to play their characters a gazillion more times, but still, I really want to see their fully realized Iron Man 2 and not Marvel's Iron Man 2. Marvel Studios broken. Iron Man 2. A movie with a bunch of pieces that work well enough on their own, but when thrown into the blender, they become fractured, broken, and don't blend together at all. I originally didn't plan on even discussing this film when I made my video on Iron Man. I made the first video to spread the love and I wanted to leave it at that. But then that cynical part of my brain started itching, and that itching led to some thinking. If Iron Man 1 started the entire MCU, everything that works, everything that amazes us and captivates us, then Iron Man 2 was the start of everything I don't like about the way Marvel makes movies. You take something that's fresh, that's exciting, that's full of heart. You take that something and then pressure the people who created it to do it again and do it quicker. Not only do you do that, but then you start to pick apart, edit, rework, and muck up what they came up with until you feel that it is the most mass appealing product it can be. This has happened again and again, and not only at Marvel Studios, it's happened at Sony, at WB, at Fox, and will continue to happen, and that's just fucked. But there's no easy solution. As long as these films keep making money, and they will, this cycle will repeat itself. That doesn't mean I want it to. This won't happen to every movie, but in my opinion, it shouldn't happen to any movie. You could watch Iron Man 2 20 times like me and not even notice any of what the filmmakers are trying to say, because what they are trying to say is rushed, interfered with, or left on the cutting room floor entirely. And that's wrong. I would never call Iron Man 2 bad. I would never say that it has no merit, but I would also never call it exceptional. It's a mess of ideas, and its broken nature keeps those ideas from blossoming into something special, something unique, something powerful. Instead, what we are left with is this almost forgotten sequel that most everyone considers fine, and an Iron Man movie that sadly, nobody really cares to remember.
To the fans of Iron Man, I'm the biggest fan of Iron Man. It was my life. I lived it for 2 years, and since then, all I've been doing is thinking about it. I went around the world, saw how it was received. So now that I know that people share our taste, we're perfectly teed up in the sense that the audience is waiting to see what we do next, and I will not let them down. But things change a lot around here.
Yeah.
Everything we shoot, it changes everything else.
Everything's changing.
But we're gonna try to keep your stuff pretty intact so that you could prepare and dig into it.
I'm changing my sexual preference on this movie. Everything's changing. Nuts.
Everything's up for grabs.